The observation deck of the Galactic Council station hung above the planet Meridian like a great crystal eye. Ambassador Harper stood at the transparent wall and looked down at the blue and green world below. His hands felt cold. In a few moments, he would walk into the Grand Chamber and ask the most important question humanity had ever posed to the galaxy. The Galactic Council had ruled over 10,000 star systems for 3,000 years. They were old, they were wise, they were powerful, and they had no time for Earth. Turned from the window and walked toward the chamber. His shoes made soft sounds on the floor. The station's artificial gravity felt heavier than Earth's. Everything about this place felt heavier. The weight of history, the weight of centuries of civilizations working together, the weight of human insignificance. The doors to the Grand Chamber opened. The sound echoed through the massive space. Walked forward, his footsteps small in the vastness. The chamber was shaped like a great bowl. The council members sat on raised platforms that rose up the sides. Some of them barely noticed his arrival. Others turned to look at the human with expressions he could not read. The architect representative was first. Its body was made of crystalline material that caught the light and threw it in rainbow patterns. Its voice came from everywhere at once, like sound itself had become sentient. "We received the petition from the human species of Earth," the architect said. "You exist on a dangerous world. Your sun threatens you. Your own planet threatens you. And yet you wish to join our defense alliance against the Void Swarm." Stepped forward, he had practiced these words 1,000 times. He had written them, rewritten them, deleted them, and written them again. "The Void Swarm threatens all life in this galaxy," said. His voice sounded small. He made it bigger. "Humanity has resources. We have soldiers. We have the will to fight. We should stand together against this threat." A member of the Veiled Ones spoke next. The Veiled Ones were telepathic. They appeared as shapes of light and shadow, constantly shifting, never still. Their words came into his mind directly, bypassing his ears entirely. It made him uncomfortable. "We have observed your species," the Veiled One said in his thoughts. "You are clever for your age. You developed space travel in just 3 centuries. Many species take 10 times longer. And yet cleverness is not the same as capability. Your weapons are crude. Your ships are fragile. Your military tactics are barbaric by our standards." "We learn quickly," said. "We adapt, we survive. That is what humans do best." The gold-skinned Meridian spoke from her platform. She had always seemed almost human too, which made her dismissal hurt more than the others. "Survival on your does not translate to survival in galactic warfare," she said. Her words were kind, but that made them cut deeper. "The Void Swarm consumes entire fleets. We have lost 20 billion lives already. We cannot afford to send ships to protect human soldiers who do not understand the scale of what we face." "We are not asking for protection," said. "We are asking for partnership." The sound that came from the council then was like laughter. It spread across the chamber. Some members made sounds. Others released frequencies that felt in his bones. Even some who looked almost human were expressing their amusement. The elder of the rose slowly. They were massive, their exoskeletons covered in markings that indicated rank and accomplishment. This one was old. Had been told the elder was 2,000 years old. He had seen the rise and fall of 7 human civilizations. "Partnership," the elder repeated. "Humans have been in space for fewer than 300 years. We have been building defense networks for 3. Your species did not even know space existed when we were already exploring the dark places between stars. And you think we should treat you as partners?" Felt something hot in his chest. Not fear, anger, but he pushed it down. Anger would not help Earth. "Then let us prove ourselves," he said. "Give us a role, give us a task. Let us show you what we can do." The council members spoke among themselves. Not in words, but in electromagnetic pulses and quantum shifts that could not understand. He stood alone in the center of the chamber while the ancient powers of the galaxy decided what to do with humanity. Finally, the architect spoke again. "The humans may participate in the outer defense perimeter," it said. "You will monitor certain regions and report findings to our command structure. You will not engage enemy forces directly. You will not make strategic decisions. You will observe and report. If this works, perhaps in 100 years, we will consider humanity for a greater role." 100 years, felt something break inside him. He nodded anyway. "Earth thanks the council," he said. He walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the council had already moved on to other matters. They did not waste time thinking about humans. Humans were a problem to be managed, not a partner to be respected. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks on the fastest ship humanity had access to, sat in his quarters and looked at reports from home. Earth's governments were preparing for war. They had built ships and weapons without the Council's knowledge. They had hidden factories on the moon and beneath the oceans. They had been planning for this moment without telling anyone. When arrived at Earth, Admiral Porter met him at the landing pad. She was tall and strong, and her eyes were sharp. She had the look of someone who had already decided what needed to be done. "The Council rejected us," said before she could ask. "I know," Admiral Porter said. "We've known they would. They always underestimate us. That is about to be deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, 5 kilometers below the surface." Dr. Hayes worked in darkness. The walls around him were not stone or metal. They were something else, something that had been waiting in the deep for 50,000 years. The structure had been discovered by accident in 1998. A deep ocean research vessel had found the entrance while mapping underwater formations. The discovery had been hidden from the world. Only the highest levels of human government and military knew the truth. There was an alien artifact on Earth. There were many of them, actually, scattered across the planet, waiting. Dr. Hayes was the world's expert on what the scientists called the installation. He had spent 40 years learning its secrets. The structure was a power generator, not just any generator. It could create energy from the quantum foam of space itself. The builders, whoever they were, had been gods compared to humanity, or at least they had seemed like gods once. Stood before a massive control panel. The symbols on it were beautiful. They made sense to him now. It had taken decades, but he had learned to read the language of gods. "How long until full activation?" asked General Cole. He stood behind, a heavy presence in the narrow space. The general had commanded Earth's military for 15 years. He was not a man to waste time on small talk. 6 hours, said. "The quantum reactors are spinning up. Once they reach critical mass, we can begin powering the outer installations." "And the weapons systems?" Hesitated. This was the part that troubled him. The old civilization had not just built generators. They had built defenses, terrible defenses, weapons that could destroy entire cities, entire planets maybe. "The weapons systems were never designed to be understood," said. "Not by us. We barely comprehend how they work. I do not know what they will do when they activate. I know they are dangerous. I know they are powerful. I do not know the full extent of their capabilities." General Cole's face did not change. "That is acceptable," he said. "We will learn by using them." Felt cold. The general was right, of course. There was no time for perfect knowledge. The void swarm was devouring stars. Entire civilizations were being erased from existence. Earth could not wait to fully understand these ancient weapons. Earth had to use them. Across the world, similar scenes were playing out. In the Arctic, beneath layers of ice, another installation powered up. In the mountains of South America, in the deserts of Africa, beneath the cities of Europe, the ancient structures that had slept for began to wake. On the lunar far side, on a base that official records said did not exist, Commander Susan Bradley oversaw the activation of the orbital shipyard. The ships here were not built by humans. They had been built by the precursors, the ancient civilization that had seeded artifacts across the galaxy. The first ship came alive. Its hull was dark gray, smooth, without visible joints or seams. Lights flickered along its surface. The propulsion systems hummed with energy that made the air vibrate. The ship was enormous, 2 kilometers long. It made human battleships look like toys. Susan watched from the control center as the first ship, then the second, then the third began to power up. 20 ships in total, 20 ships that could turn the tide of war. 20 reasons why the galaxy had been foolish to dismiss humanity. "Status report," Susan commanded. "All systems coming online," her second officer, Captain Richard Grant, said. "The weapons are active, the shields are forming, all 20 vessels are now operational." "How many others are there?" Susan asked. She had been briefed on some of this, but not all. The truth was still being revealed to even her. 50 more in storage," Richard said. "Still in assembly stages. They could be operational within 2 months if we push the workers hard." Susan nodded. 50 more ships. Then the true awakening would begin. In the halls of the United Nations, President William Grant made the decision that would change everything. He sat in a room with the military leaders of every nation on Earth. The old divisions, the old enemies, meant nothing now. There was only one question that mattered. Do we have the resources? The president asked. Yes, sir, Admiral Porter said. She was the commander of Earth's Unified Defense Force. It had been established in secret 5 years ago. The world's governments had been preparing for this moment without letting their people know. We have enough to fight the Void Swarm and win. And the Council? The Council is not our concern anymore, Admiral Porter said. The Council had centuries to prepare. They failed. We will not fail. President Grant looked at the faces around the table. These were the people who would lead humanity into the largest conflict the galaxy had ever known. They looked back at him with steady eyes. They were ready. Then we activate Operation Awakening, the president said. The order spread across the world in seconds. Hidden bases became visible. Ships rose from their hiding places. In the skies above Earth, the first human battle fleet took formation. They were beautiful. They were terrible. They were unstoppable. News spread like fire. The world learned that governments had been hiding weapons. The world learned that Earth had been preparing for war. The world learned that humanity possessed technology beyond anyone's imagination. There was panic, there was fear, but there was also hope. In New York, in London, in Tokyo, people looked up at the ships in the sky and felt something change inside them. For the first time in human history, humanity was not going to ask permission from anyone. Humanity was going to take its place in the galaxy by force if necessary. And the ancient weapons that had slept in the deep for 50,000 years had finally found their purpose. Dr. Hayes watched the displays in his control room. All across the planet, the precursor installations were fully awake. The power they generated was beyond measurement. The weapons they controlled were ready for deployment. He had spent his life trying to understand these devices. He had learned their languages and their logic, but understanding them had never prepared him for the weight of what they could do. Thought of the ancient builders. They had seeded these weapons across the galaxy. They had known that someday some young species would need them. They had created these tools of destruction and left them for the universe to find. The Void Swarm moved through space like death itself. It was not a single creature. It was a hunger, a darkness that consumed everything it touched. Entire star systems vanished when the swarm reached them. Billions of lives ended in seconds. The Galactic Council's defense fleet was dying. Admiral Porter watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. The Council had sent 3,000 ships to the front lines. Already more than half were destroyed. The Void Swarm did not fight like normal enemies. It did not use tactics. It did not need them. It simply kept coming, and everything it touched ceased to exist. The Council was failing. That much was clear to everyone now. "All ships standing by for jump," said to her crew. The bridge of the Defender of Dawn was quiet. Every person at their station knew what they were about to do. They were about to change the course of history. The Defender of Dawn was the flagship of the human battle fleet. It was one of the ships from the lunar shipyard. It was different from anything the Council had ever built. Its hull was stronger, its weapons were deadlier, its systems were more efficient. It was humanity's promise to the galaxy. We are here, we are capable, we are dangerous. Behind the Defender of Dawn, 54 more ships took formation. Not all of the fleet had been activated, only the ones that were absolutely ready, but 55 ships carrying the weight of human determination was enough. "Weapons charged," said Commander David Brooks from the weapons station. He was young, barely 40 years old, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. His family had been soldiers for generations. Fighting was in his blood. "Communications open to all ships," commanded. "All units, this is Admiral Porter. We are about to enter a war zone. We are about to face an enemy that has destroyed 1,000 civilizations. We are about to prove that we belong among the stars, for Earth, for humanity. Go." The ships moved toward the Council's battle line at maximum speed. The distance shrank. 1,000,000 kilometers, 500,000 kilometers. The Void Swarm was visible now. It was a darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. It was wrong. It was not supposed to exist. It violated every law of nature that the Council understood. Humanity did not know those laws yet. Humanity only knew how to fight. The first volley came from the human ships. They fired energy weapons that burned with blue fire. The beams of light struck the Void Swarm, and something happened that had never happened before. The swarm bled. Its darkness split open, and something inside of it shrieked. The Council ships stopped dying for a moment. They turned to look at the humans. They watched in shock as the human vessels moved with precision that the Council could not achieve. The humans moved like predators. They moved like creatures that had evolved in a world where weakness meant death. Porter watched the enemy formation. Her tactical computer was processing information faster than thought. She saw patterns where others saw chaos. She saw weaknesses where others saw only overwhelming power. "Brooks," she said, "send your fighter wing to Sector 7. There is a gap forming in their formation." "Sending now," David said. His fingers moved across his controls. The fighters launched from the carrier ships. 20 fighters, small, fast, deadly. They moved into the gap that had identified, and the void swarm tried to close around them. But the fighters were too quick. They were piloted by humans who had practiced this maneuver 1,000 times. The pilots were willing to take risks that other species would never attempt. One fighter flew so close to a tendril of the void swarm that its wing nearly touched it. The pilot pulled up at the last possible instant and fired every weapon at once. The swarm shrieked again. The Council watched in amazement. These humans were insane. They were reckless. They were doing the impossible. "All ships focus fire on the marked targets," said. The entire human fleet changed direction at once. They moved like a single organism with a single will. The volley they fired burned with the power of 100 suns. The void swarm's darkness split open. Whatever existed inside of it, whatever hunger drove it forward, was meeting resistance for the first time in its long existence. The battle raged for hours. The human ships took damage. 3 of them were destroyed when they flew too close to the swarm. The pilots died in the fire and the void. But for every human ship lost, the swarm lost something of itself. Its darkness became thinner. Its hunger became weaker. In his fighter, David Brooks led his squadron deeper into the chaos. He could feel the power of his ship around him. He could feel the weapons responding to his will. He could feel the absolute certainty that what he was doing was right. And then he saw it, a place where the swarm could break through. In the human line, if the swarm pushed through there, it would reach the Council's command station. It would destroy what was left of their resistance. David did not think. He did not calculate probabilities. He acted. His fighter accelerated toward the gap. Behind him, his squadron tried to follow, but David was too fast. He reached the first. He positioned his fighter in the gap, and he overloaded his weapons. The explosion was beautiful. It was terrible. It was final. The void swarm poured into the gap and found David Brooks's fighter at the center, and found death instead of victory. Porter felt it happen through the tactical display. She felt the sudden absence where David Brooks had been. She felt the sacrifice. "All ships," she said, and her voice was cold steel. "The swarm has just learned something. We do not abandon our own. We do not leave gaps. We do not surrender. Fire every weapon we have." The human fleet attacked with fury, with grief, with the absolute determination of a species that understands what it means to lose. Every weapon, every ship, every pilot who had trained for this moment. The void swarm broke. It did not retreat slowly. It did not retreat strategically. It broke like something that had finally understood that it was going to lose. The battle was over. The human fleet hung in space, damaged but standing. The void swarm's darkness receded into the distance. For the first time, it was running from enemies it had encountered. The Council ships began to move toward the human vessels, not in threat, in greeting, in recognition. They had just witnessed something that had never happened before. They had witnessed the awakening of a sleeping predator. They had watched humans fight like nothing they had ever seen. Porter stood on the bridge of the Defender of Dawn and looked at her damage reports. 55 ships had entered the battle. 48 were still operational. 7 crew members had been lost. 7 too many. 7 not enough to stop what was coming next. The galaxy had been wrong about humans, catastrophically wrong. And now the galaxy would have to learn to live with what they had dismissed as primitive. The human fleet turned toward the next battle, the next enemy. The next chance to prove what could the Council chamber fell silent when the humans arrived. The great architects, the veiled ones, the ancient, and 100 other species that ruled the galaxy watched as Admiral Porter walked into their presence. She moved with the confidence of someone who had just killed an enemy they had been losing to for months. No one bowed. No one showed submission. The humans had not come to the Council asking for anything. They had come because they had defeated the void swarm's advance, and the Council needed to acknowledge that fact. Admiral Porter, the eldest architect said, you have demonstrated capability that surprises us. We have demonstrated what we are, said. The question now is whether the Council is ready to understand that. The veiled ones pulsed with light. When they spoke, their words came not from ears but directly into her mind. It was meant to be disturbing. It was meant to show their power. Did not react. She simply looked at them with steady eyes. We can read your thoughts, the veiled one said. Then you know I am not afraid, said. This was true. The veiled one extracted what it needed from her mind and understood something shocking. Porter was not afraid because she had already faced death and won. She did not fear the Council because she did not fear anything anymore. The elder rose to his full height. He was massive. His mandibles worked in a way that might have been anger or might have been respect. The human demonstrates respect toward us, the said, but not submission. This is a dangerous attitude. Respect is not the same as submission, said. Earth respects the Council's age and experience, but Earth does not submit to anyone. We have proven that we do not need to. Proven how, the Meridian asked. By luck, by accident. Activated the display she had brought. Three-dimensional images filled the chamber. They showed every battle the human fleet had fought in the past 70 hours. They showed human tactics and human responses. They showed humans adapting in real time to an enemy they had never encountered before. The Council watched in silence. Luck is when a coin lands in your favor, said. Accident is when you hit something you were not aiming at. What you are watching is neither. This is planning. This is training. This is what humans do when we face death. We think faster, we adapt quicker, we survive. You had advanced ships, the architect said. Technology you inherited, not created. Yes, said. The precursor technology gave us tools, but the tools are only as good as the people who use them. The Council has ships equally as advanced. The Council has technology equally ancient. And yet the Council could not stop the void swarm. Humans could. The words fell like stones into still water. What explains this difference? The veiled one asked from inside's mind. Had thought about this. She had analyzed this. She had turned this question over and over in her mind until she had found the answer. She said, Earth is not a kind world. The sun is angry. The planet is unstable. Every creature on Earth fights to survive every moment of its existence. That builds something in a species, something that the Council's civilizations have lost. What? The asked. Hunger, said. Desperation. The absolute knowledge that mercy from the universe will not come, that you have to take what you need or you will die. The Council has forgotten how to want something badly enough to risk everything for it. The chamber remained silent for a long time. We will require proof of this, the architect finally said. The Council cannot make decisions based on the words of a single human. We must observe your species directly. We must understand your nature. Agreed, said, but understand this. The age of the Council dismissing humanity is over. We are not asking for permission anymore. We are telling you who we are, accept it or not. The choice belongs to the Council now. Turned and walked from the chamber. Behind her, the Council began to argue. The ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years were not accustomed to being challenged, but they could not deny what they had witnessed. They could not deny that humans had done what they had believed was impossible. Over the next weeks, the battle lines shifted. The Void Swarm attacked a sector controlled by the Council. The Council sent their best fleet to defend it. The humans sent a support force under Commander Anderson. What happened next changed everything. The Council's fleet was skilled. They were experienced. They had fought together for centuries. But they moved like machines following programs. They moved with precision but without flexibility. They moved without the hunger that drove human tactics. Commander Anderson watched from the bridge of his ship and saw exactly where the Council's formation would fail. He saw the gaps. He saw the patterns. He moved his ships into positions the Council had not expected. He created pressure points. He forced the enemy to react rather than act. And when the moment came, Anderson gave a command that no Council commander would ever have made. All fighter wings execute the crossing maneuver, he said. It was a maneuver that meant certain death for at least half the fighters. It was a sacrifice, a deliberate choice to lose ships to gain advantage. The Council commanders saw the humans moving into suicidal positions and did not understand. The Void Swarm surged forward to destroy the fighters. And the moment it did, every human battleship moved into position and fired. The swarm broke, the Council's fleet held, and 70 human fighters did not return home. That night, Anderson sat alone on his ship and wept for the people he had ordered to die. The Veiled Ones entered his mind and felt this. They felt his grief. They felt his anger that it had to be this way, and they began to understand. Humans fought with sacrifice because sacrifice was all they had ever known. Humans risked their lives because they had learned, over millions of years of evolution on a harsh world, that safety was an illusion. The Council had learned the opposite. Safety could be bought with time, with waiting, with overwhelming firepower applied carefully and strategically. Humans did not have time, so humans were dangerous. The Void Swarm was pushed back further. The human fleets coordinated with the Council's forces, and the combined strength held. But something had changed in the galaxy. The Council no longer saw humanity as an experiment or a curiosity. They saw humanity as a force that could not be stopped, a force that would not submit. Ambassador Harper watched from the Council station as the decision was made. The Council would offer humanity a permanent seat, a voice in decisions, equality. Thought back to when he had stood in this same chamber weeks ago and been told that humans were too primitive to participate in galactic defense. He thought about the 70 fighters that had died under Anderson's command. He thought about David Brooks sacrificing himself in the vacuum of space. The Void Swarm retreated through the rift that had brought it into the galaxy. The darkness that had consumed trillions of lives was driven back into the void between dimensions. The war was not won, but the tide had turned. The galaxy could breathe again. The cost had been catastrophic. 3 trillion lives lost, entire civilizations erased, the most advanced fleets in galactic history reduced to wreckage and memory. The Council's forces had lost 70% of their military strength. The humans had lost 17% of their fleet. The difference was clear. The Council had been defending, the humans had been fighting. Admiral Porter received the formal invitation to the new Council session while standing on the observation deck of the Defender of Dawn. The ship was damaged. The hull was, some sections would never be fully repaired. But the ship was still flying, the ship was still fighting, and that was enough. The new Council chamber had been built hastily as the old one had been destroyed in an attack. It was smaller, more practical, less ceremonial. The age of grand gestures was over. The age of survival had begun. Walked into the chamber and took her seat. There was no hesitation, no sense that she was stepping into a place she did not belong. She was a representative of a galactic power now. That fact was simply accepted. "The human delegation arrives," the architect announced. "We acknowledge Admiral Porter and her human colleagues." Ambassador Harper sat beside. He looked different now. He carried himself differently. He was no longer a supplicant asking for help. He was a voice that the galaxy had to listen to. "The Council faces difficult decisions," the Meridian said. "We have lost the majority of our fleet. We have lost worlds. We have lost citizens beyond counting. The question before us is how we rebuild and how we ensure that the Void Swarm does not return." "Humans have a proposal," said. The chamber fell silent. "The precursor technology that created our ships also exists in other forms across the galaxy," continued. "We believe the ancient builders left these weapons and tools scattered because they knew that no single species could defend the entire galaxy. They intended for multiple species to find these artifacts and use them together." "You are suggesting that we search the galaxy for precursor installations?" the Elder asked. "I am suggesting that we search together," said. "Humans, Council members, any species willing to participate. We use the ancient technology. We rebuild our fleets. We create a defense network that cannot be broken. We ensure that no threat like the Void Swarm can ever emerge again." The Council debated this for hours, but the outcome was already decided. They had seen what human tactical brilliance could accomplish. They knew that opposing the humans would mean war, and the galaxy could not survive another war. The vote was unanimous. Humans would be granted full Council status. Humanity would have veto power on all defensive matters. And most importantly, humans and Council species would work together to build the future. The rebuilding process began immediately. Human engineers worked alongside the architects to construct new warships. Human tacticians trained the warriors in human combat doctrine. Human strategists sat beside the oldest minds in the galaxy and participated in decisions that shaped the fate of trillions. In the months that followed, statues began to appear on damaged worlds. Monuments to the human soldiers who had died defending species they had never met. Memorials to sacrifice and bravery. On the colony world of Vex Prime, a statue of David Brooks was erected in the central plaza. The inscription read simply, "He gave everything so that we could live." Thousands of Vex came to see it. They touched the stone with their multiple appendages and understood something they had not known before. Sacrifice could come from anyone, even from a species barely 3 centuries into space exploration. Commander Anderson submitted his resignation from active military service. He was promoted to admiral and appointed to lead the Joint Human Council Research Initiative into precursor technology. He accepted the position with a speech that became famous throughout the galaxy. "We came to the stars knowing we were young," said. "We came knowing we were primitive. We came asking to be accepted. But what we found was something different. We found that being young meant we could adapt. Being primitive meant we had learned to survive. And asking to be accepted meant we were humble enough to learn from species with 10,000 times our experience. Together, we are stronger than we have ever been. And together, we will protect what we have built." Dr. Hayes was asked to lead the joint research program into unlocking the remaining precursor installations. He accepted with one condition. The research would be conducted openly. Secrets had served no purpose in this war. Knowledge shared among all the species would serve a better one. On Earth, President William Grant addressed the world from the old United Nations building. The building was old and worn, a remnant of a time when Earth had been divided against itself. It had been chosen deliberately for this speech. "Humanity has taken its place among the stars," the president said. "We are no longer supplicants. We are no longer seekers of permission. We are partners in the greatest alliance in galactic history. But this position came with a cost. It came with sacrifice. It came with the deaths of brave men and women who understood that some things are worth dying for." The president paused. "I want the galaxy to understand something about humanity," he continued. "We do not fight for conquest. We do not fight for domination. We fight because we have learned over millions of years of evolution on a harsh world that the people you love are worth protecting, that the innocent are worth saving, that the future is worth defending. These are the values that brought us to the stars. These are the values that will keep us here, and these are the values we will share with everyone who will listen." The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every civilization understood it. Humanity was not taking over the galaxy. Humanity was not seeking revenge for centuries of dismissal. Humanity was simply taking its rightful place as an equal power and offering its strength to protect others. That was the moment when the galaxy truly understood what had happened. The Void Swarm had not been defeated by advanced technology. It had not been defeated by ancient weapons. It had been defeated because the galaxy had gained an ally that would never surrender. A species that would throw itself into danger without hesitation. A species that understood sacrifice not as a concept, but as a daily reality. A species from a harsh world, where mercy was rare and strength was the only currency that mattered. The new order was taking shape, and at its center stood humans, young, fierce, unstoppable. The galaxy was no longer divided into the advanced and the primitive. It was divided now into those who understood sacrifice and those who were learning to understand it. 6 months after the battle, the galaxy was a different place. The Void Swarm's rift had been sealed. 3 civilizations had combined their knowledge to create a device that could close the passage between dimensions. It was mounted at the borderland between dimensions where the attack had emerged. It would hold, for now, forever if luck was with them. Admiral Porter stood on a transport ship and looked down at the world of Vex Prime. The planet was rebuilding. Where there had been devastation, construction was beginning. Where there had been death, life was returning. The transport landed in the central plaza, walked out into the light and saw the statue of David Brooks. It was larger than she expected. It was also beautiful. The Vex sculptors had captured something essential about him. The determination, the willingness to sacrifice. Placed her hand on the stone. It was warm from the sun. David would have liked this world, she thought. David would have appreciated that his sacrifice was remembered by beings so different from himself. The Vex gathered around her. They had come to thank her, to honor her, to understand the woman who had led the humans to victory. "Your species fought for us," one of the Vex said. Its voice was like wind through crystal. "You did not have to, you did not gain anything by helping us, and yet you bled for us." Did not know how to explain this to beings who came from a species that had always prioritized survival over sacrifice. She tried anyway. "That is what humans do," she said simply. "We protect, we defend, we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is who we are." The Vex processed this. They began to understand that there were different ways to be intelligent, different ways to be strong. Not all of them involved advanced weapons or ancient technology. Some of them involved choosing to die so that others could live. Left Vex Prime and traveled to 14 more worlds. Each one had been damaged by the Void Swarm. Each one was rebuilding, and on each one gave the same message. Earth was committed to rebuilding. Earth would send resources. Earth would send engineers. Earth would help. The galaxy had not asked for this, but humans had learned long ago that gratitude followed action. If you helped people, they would remember. If you asked nothing in return, they would owe you everything. It was a different way of thinking than the Council had ever understood, but it was working. Back on Earth, the government was facing difficult questions. How should the species who had always been enemies before now work together? How should a planet that had spent its entire history divided learn to act as one for the galaxy? President William Grant called an assembly of all Earth's leaders. It was the first time in Earth's history that every nation, every group, every faction that had ever claimed to represent humanity sat in the same room together. "The galaxy is watching us," the president said. "We have proven that we can be warriors. We have proven that we can be strategists. Now we must prove that we can be wise, that we can be just, that we can help build something better than what existed before." The assembly debated for 3 days, but in the end they reached agreement. Earth would lead a rebuilding initiative. Earth would share its precursor technology with all species who needed it. Earth would not seek domination. Earth would not seek revenge. Earth would seek partnership. The decision surprised many in the galaxy. The humans had proven themselves to be fierce warriors, but it turned out they were also capable of being something else, capable of choosing mercy when they could have chosen domination. Dr. Hayes became the director of the Precursor Research Collective. It was the largest scientific endeavor the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies for worked together under human leadership. Stood in a laboratory that existed in quantum space, a place that existed partially in multiple dimensions at once, and looked at what they had discovered. The precursor civilization had left records, not just weapons, histories, philosophies, warnings. The records made clear that the precursor species had seeded the galaxy with tools because they knew that young species would eventually face threats they could not overcome alone. The ancient builders had created the weapons not for conquest, but for survival, and they had left them scattered across multiple worlds because they believed that true strength came from unity. Humanity had understood this instinctively in a way the Council had not. That was why humans had won. "We are being sent another visitor," assistant Dr. Rachel Stone said. She was looking at a sensor reading. "Another species, they want to learn about human combat tactics." This had become routine. Species from across the galaxy now sent military officers to Earth to study human strategy. They wanted to understand how a species so young had defeated a threat that the oldest civilizations had been losing to. What they found surprised them all. The humans did not fight according to mathematical principles. They fought according to stories. They fought by remembering people they had lost. They fought by understanding that sacrifice could inspire others to fight harder. They adapted these lessons, and their military became stronger. The architects incorporated human flexibility into their rigid strategic systems and became more adaptive. The veiled ones learned to appreciate sacrifice as something that transcended mere efficiency. The galaxy was being transformed by a simple truth. The way to win was not always through superior force. Sometimes it was through understanding that you were fighting for something more important than victory. 3 years after the battle, the Galactic Council was restructured. It was no longer a council of the ancient and powerful. It was a council that included representatives from every significant species. Humanity held 5 seats. The old order was truly dead. Ambassador Harper walked into the chamber for the first time as a full member with voting rights rather than as a petitioner. He looked different now. He had spent 3 years learning the politics of the galaxy. He had become a statesman, but he had not lost the fire that had driven him to demand equality from the beginning. "The human delegation is prepared to make a proposal," he said. "We believe that the precursor technology should be shared freely among all species. We believe that walls between civilizations should be dismantled. We believe that the future of the galaxy should be built together, not separately." The vote was nearly unanimous. Only a few species abstained. Everyone else understood what had been proven. The galaxy was stronger when it acted as one. The galaxy was safer when it had nothing to hide from itself. Porter, now retired from active duty, accepted a position as the director of Unified Galactic Defense. She refused the honor for months. She said she was just a soldier from a young world. She said she was not qualified. But the galaxy knew the truth. Porter was qualified because she had learned to lead not through command but through example. She had shown the galaxy that the young could teach the old, that the weak could protect the strong, that sacrifice could create strength that no weapon could match. On the lunar base where the battle fleet had been born, a memorial was erected. It listed the names of every human soldier who had died in the war. Thousands of names, all of them honored, all of them remembered. Young humans came to stand before the memorial, and they understood something. Their species had chosen to stand. Their species had chosen to fight. Their species had chosen to help others even when it cost them everything. That was the legacy, not the weapons, not the ships, not the technology, but the choice. The choice that made every time they decided that something was worth fighting for. In the quantum laboratory, Dr. Hayes made a final discovery. The precursor species had left a message. It had been encoded in the deepest parts of their technology. It took 3 years to decode. It took another year to translate. The message was simple. To whoever finds this, we built these weapons not because we wanted war. We built them because we wanted you to have a chance to survive, a chance to grow, a chance to become something more than you were. Use them wisely, help others. And when you encounter beings younger than yourselves, remember that the future belongs to those who are willing to sacrifice for it. The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species received it. Every civilization understood it. And in understanding, they saw why humanity had been given this role. Why had been chosen to be the ones who awakened. It was not because they were the strongest. It was because they had learned, over millions of years of evolution in a harsh world, that strength meant nothing without compassion. That power meant nothing without sacrifice. That victory meant nothing unless you had someone to share it with. The galaxy had awakened. The age of isolation was over. The age of alliance had begun. And it had all started because a young species from a harsh world had decided to stand up and say, "We deserve to be heard. We deserve to be respected. We deserve to be your equals." The galaxy had been wrong about humanity, catastrophically, profoundly wrong. But now, finally, they had learned the truth. We're not the weakest creatures in the galaxy. They were the strongest, not because of weapons or technology, but because they understood something that no other species had ever truly learned. That the only thing stronger than survival was sacrifice, and the only thing more powerful than power was the willingness to use it to protect others. That was the awakening. That was the lesson the galaxy learned from humanity. And it would shape civilization for 10,000 years to come. And humanity was teaching the lesson. In every sector of the galaxy, new ships were being built. New defenses were being established. New alliances were being formed. The age of the Council was ending. The age of alliance was beginning. And it had all started because someone had been bold enough to ask, what if they are not weak? What if they are just beginning? The answer to that question was reshaping civilization itself. The galaxy had learned to respect humans at last. The cost had been high, but the awakening was complete. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Due when they were finally given permission to be themselves. Now humanity had found them, and the galaxy was about to understand what happened when a species was given godlike power. Their greatest mistake. Behind her could see movement in the distance. Ships were being moved. Weapons were being loaded. Earth was preparing not to fight alongside the Council, but to fight in spite of them. Harper realized then that the galaxy's greatest miscalculation was not taking humanity seriously. The galaxy had assumed humans were weak because they were young. The galaxy did not understand that we're never truly weak. They were only sleeping, and they were about to wake up.